Hi, Amit. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the
Thank you
Growth
for
Calyber
having me, Dr.
Podcast.
Deepa. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You came all the way from Noida. We are very grateful
Yeah,
to you
you,
for
you've
taking
come all the
time
way
off.
from Bangalore, actually, more than me. So thank you for having me. Looking
Thank you so
forward to
much.
this discussion.
It's going to
Quite
be
excited.
looking forward to this invigorating discussion and the great insights that you have brought to share with all of us.
I'll try my best to be as not candid as possible. But
Be as candid as possible.
no, I have this reputation of playing the devil's advocate,
Right.
especially on social media, LinkedIn, and offline as well. So, yeah. Thank you again for having me.
Thanks. So I'll just dive straight into the some of the questions that I intended to ask you and seek your insights and inputs and your thoughts on them. Just to start with a little bit about your background, reflecting on your extensive career spanning sales, GTM strategy, strategic alliances, product ideation, e-commerce, and funding. My God, you've covered a whole gamut of
right.
functions and areas, right? What are those pivotal moments or experiences that have shaped your approach in business and leadership? And if you could start from your early career and what you have done.
Right. So yeah, I mean, even though just to give an intro, I mean, I belong to a multi-generational business family. So obviously grew up with business on being discussed on dinner tables while growing up in my teenage years. And also we're a multicultural family, grew up in various geographies. So all those experiences, shaped up who I am today. An accidental entrepreneur of sorts, starting my career because it was the family business and it was a natural progression.
What business were you?
So we were into the export trade,
Okay.
which I joined and then managed also and ran for a number of years. And prior to that, also my parents were based in a similar business outside India in Africa. I grew up in Africa, so multicultural, very nuanced kind of experiences from various cultures. So naturally, now in terms of pivotal moments or experience, there've been like far so many. So when I say I was an accidental entrepreneur, even while doing my management in London, I used to invariably help my brother and sister who had started the business at that point,
Okay.
and to earn some extra money, even though my brother never paid me, but still. The interesting part, and that's where the pivotal moment also comes very early. I was barely 19 and a half on a vacation from my management studies in London to Delhi, helping my sister at a trade show. Now, this is
Okay.
pre-e-commerce, pre-internet era. So,
What year was this?
99.
99.
99.
Okay.
So, very much so, the only means of marketing, we were into B2B exports, home textiles, to major retailers in the world. Actually, that time there were no major retailers. My sister had just started that business.
Okay.
And one of the first times she was exhibiting, displaying the products at a trade show in Delhi, at the same place you were yesterday, Pragati Maidan.
Pragati Maidan, yes.
And we had the smallest booth in that whole exhibition, with large major buyers across the world coming in. And we had just got into. So I was helping my sister, to cut the story short. And on the second day, in walked in a very nonchalant American businessman, who was actually quite intrigued that how come such young people are part of this big exhibition. And he just started talking about our backgrounds, our history, more than the product, and brought out a little product from his bag, which was a Santa sack, like you have Santa sacks, right? It was a small Santa sack, a gift item. And he said if we could possibly make that, because we were into textiles,
Okay.
and gave his background. The gentleman at that point owned some 13,000 sales outlets and stores in the US. He was the founder, CEO of the company on his first India visit.
Okay.
So the pivotal moment there was, even though it was a business meeting, he wanted to know more about the city and culture, and he invited me to take him around town the next morning and subsequent 3 days, and kept visiting us. And I did spend, so those were the early things which I got hooked onto. Anyways, the man left India after a week, some meetings we had. And we were not too confident, number one, and we never thought we would get that order or contract. And I was still on a 3-week vacation and got quite excited about the prospects of making that sale happen. And we sent across counter samples. by speed post because we had just started, didn't have money for couriers also, or didn't want to spend. And they did receive and communicating on fax machines, a new fax machine we had bought that time. And to cut the story short, in about 3 weeks from then, which still remains one of the biggest sales of my career, I had $150,000 order early morning on a fax machine. So it was a pivotal moment, but the moment there was what all I picked up from that gentleman. And he had made a statement which stays with me 28 years down the line now. Business is all about people and the relationships between them. And the gentleman said that on the second day of meeting me. I was 19 and a half, 20 barely. We did business with that gentleman for the next with his company and his teams in the US. It was a Chicago-based company. And I've lived by, why I narrated this story is I've lived by that principle about business being about people.
Right.
No matter what industry you're in, and the relationships.
Yes.
Of course, I mean, all business is transactional. But if you take it from that perspective of forming and maintaining relationships, right? And just a little more pivotal. So, of course, my journey continued in that family business for many years, fairly large at that time, pre-e-commerce, pre-internet, pre the fancy term called startups or anything. And we ran it nicely across the world for many years. In 2014, after living in many geographies, I came back to India and helping a friend's friend, ended up co-founding a technology startup in Hyderabad called Mera Events, an events ticketing marketing platform, much like our senior peer called Book My Show. So there are lots of, and this was my first stint working with a larger professional team and getting exposed to the word startup, even having 20 years prior experience. And the whole world just changed upside down. Getting used to working in a hustle culture. So, and now 10 years down the line, after exactly 10 years from 2014 till now, various pivotal moments. But again, the value of those relationships and people, right? I am quite good at networking, but there are certain nuances in networking also when you don't make it transactional and things. So in that business, there were some key pivotal moments where we scaled up very rapidly, which we will talk later on in our discussion. And what were the failures and the learnings? I mean, so rapidly in 8 months, we almost took 80% market share of the market leader at that point called Book My Show, doing some 150 odd crore GMV, a fancy term at that point also, gross merchandise value. And I ended up taking 15, 20 flights a week, and I'm not boasting, for 8 months living out of a suitcase in 2014, much before all these new age fancy entrepreneurs even, I think, came into existence. So been through that grind, hustle, and after those 8-9 months, lots of learnings, many key pivotal moments, how we grabbed the market share, and some innovations. But all those things came because of the strong foundation I had leading and being a part of a family business, a traditional brick and mortar setup. Ultimately, you see, a business is a business, no matter how many fancy terms of startups and hyper growth and marketing acronyms we put in there, GTM and performance marketing, or corporate lingo, which I'm sure you are more adept than me, OKRs and KPIs and all that. Ultimately, you see, business is a business, and if you have your fundamentals in place, things could be, good for everybody. So yeah, I mean, lots of pivotal moments. I mean, these two actually stood out to me.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. So, subsequent to that, points that you shared, in your current role that you're playing, working with startups and venture capital ecosystem, what trends or shifts are you seeing, are you witnessing in this startup landscape that we are talking about? And how are they influencing the strategies for growth and scale?
Right. Very important question, actually, and a very pivotal time in the whole ecosystem currently. So, and it's good that I gave you my background from 2014, and that is when the Indian startup ecosystem came into prominence and being when we had the Flipkarts, Olas, Oyos, and global corporations like Amazon, Uber coming in, right? Uh, and that's when everything just started mushrooming. And also, incidentally, I'd like to make a mention: the political environment in this country changed at that point in 2014, with a huge impetus on Startup India. That
Yes.
they coined the term.
Yes.
And
Yes.
not only the term, a policy came into being for the first time.
Right.
So a lot of things happened 2014, 15, and there was a lot of hype, obviously. India being the third largest market in the world after the US and China, right? And India was kind of the last frontier for a lot of global venture capitalists to capture. That's why we saw Amazon coming into the country making huge investments. So everybody was looking up at India. Now, the question so it's important to note what has happened over these last 10 years. Lots of pivotal moments, including the 2.5 year thing we had with the pandemic globally, but the effects were more pronounced in India, in this particular ecosystem of startups. So what happened actually, and I'll just take 30 seconds, over the last 10 years, because of the whole expectation on India being a large 1 billion plus TAM, that is the total addressable market. Another acronym, startup industry likes all these acronyms, right?
Right.
Which actually turned out to be a fallacy. Everybody compared it to a China or a US, which are homogeneous markets, one language essentially, more or less, one culture, and so on and so forth. India, we are a diverse country. Each state is a country.
Yes.
We were actually supposed to be like a Europe. Fortunately, unfortunately, we became one country. But the nuances, it's not only the north-south divide across sections. Every state is different, right?
Absolutely.
So that one product, one service across the entire country, it's very difficult. And that is why that 1 billion population could not be captured or addressed, right? And in the 10 years, we had so much of technology advancements, especially in mobile technology, smartphones, geo coming in and essentially making the cost of data almost free. Right? All these factors led to a lot of FOMO investing, right? Which we call the fear of missing out. Everybody pumping in globally, and Indian investors barely 15-20%. Global investors pumping in money by the hordes, by the billions, to scale up these companies, no matter who they were, including the Flipkarts and then the next 100, right? Hyper growth, hyper activity kind of a model, where they also, because of so much cash was available at cheap and access, they wanted to buy customer loyalty on deep discounting, right? And even though e-commerce was supposed to be cheaper anyhow, they still gave discounts to buy customer loyalty, even though it was not the target customer. See, India is all about our interiors, our hinterland, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, where value of money is more valued, right? They are not going to simply make a transaction because it's available online.
Right.
So a lot of mistakes were made. And then we had the hyper activity during COVID, which led to a lot of money pumping in these commerce platforms. And also another point I'd like to make is that essentially all the startups, 90% plus, which have mushroomed over the last decade, 12 years, have been copycat aggregator models from Silicon Valley and the West. Right?
Okay. Interesting.
Lack of innovation.
Okay.
If you look at Flipkart, it's essentially a copy of Amazon, including their origins of selling books. Both of them started that way. And Ola is a copy of an Uber. And Oyo is a copy of Airbnb, and so on and so forth. Right? Aggregator, copy, and commerce-based. Everybody was after the money, the transactions, and the commerce. Innovation, unlike the Silicon Valley, did not happen. We were always copying and behind in terms of it's very hard to name even one global company from India in the new age businesses. You do have some, but not like a Google or a Facebook or a Microsoft coming out of India. So we've missed the bus in the 80s and the 90s, the dot-com, and again we missed it. Now coming to and why it was important to narrate this is what has happened. Now post-COVID, most of the venture capitalist founders did not think that user behavior which went online due to compulsions of everybody being homebound will change when things open up.
Right.
See, this COVID was a black swan event, as they call it. People were not going to be confined into their homes forever. Rather, they actually got out in overwhelming numbers. We had revenge shopping, revenge travel, right? I mean, these terms came into being.
Right.
Result was that the growth was stalled, right? In key sectors like education, you have edu-tech, some companies which added technology, including a famous one called Byju's, and all other platforms.
And we'll talk about that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm known to be quite dismissive of them for valid reasons. I have nothing personal against Byju Ravindran or the company. But the moot point is all those investments which happened have now stalled because the growth did not happen, right? If 100 people were buying a product because they were online for those 2-3 years during pandemic and the years leading up to it, 60-70% have actually gone back to offline and living their life as they used to.
Right.
Growth is happening, but in pockets, right? I mean, despite the hype, the actual transacting customers, this is a very interesting statistics for your listeners, is about 150, 160 million at the max in India. Okay? These are repeat customers, probably people like you and me, who buy not for the discounts, but for the convenience of shopping online.
Right.
We value our time.
Right.
We cannot be wasting time going shopping for groceries or everyday things or electronics. We are not so value conscious about what we are spending because, our behavior is like that, right? Generally also. So it's 150 million, growing steadily, 10-15% every year. So that 1 billion thing has been busted. Now, as a result of that, last year was one of the lowest years in funding in startups and VCs. Some $8 billion only came in as opposed to 25 billion the prior year in 2022. And we've seen a literal stall down. It's gone down. It's 1/3, right? It's happened globally, but it's more pronounced in India because we are not a mature ecosystem. The appetite for risk is very limited. Right? A Silicon Valley 10-20 billion going here and there makes them no difference, right? Because their appetite is much larger. Their consumption is much larger in the new age businesses. So if they have a population of 300 million, they're 250 million shoppers, right? And plus per capita income plays a part. Average spend online is $150. In India, it's not even 500 rupees, right? Barely less than $10, right? Now, the positive part, and I'll take a minute. So there are obviously always, like a rainbow, you always have edges, the golden rainbow or things like that. There are positives here. This has forced people to do a rethink. And these people are obviously those founders. So when the taps ran dry, the funding taps, they've been forced to innovate, forced to survive. Of course, there's been a churn. A lot of companies have gone haywire, they've shut down. A lot of corporate governance issues came into being, founders being excessively greedy. And you see, no founder starts a company or runs a company for committing any fraud or things like that. But they get trapped into that cycle where they will deploy any means whatsoever necessary to survive. And their own survival, when it's at stake, individually, personally, naturally, as a human tendency, they take care of themselves rather than taking care. So the positive part is they've been forced to think. See, I'll give that example of, I know I go into detailed answers, but still, example of a French delicacy called foie gras. Right? Now, foie gras is a delicacy. It's a food item made out of duck and turkey livers, where over the last decades, the turkey or the duck is force-fed large amounts of food so that the liver is enlarged, and from the liver comes this delicacy, they process it and all. Now, the after effect of force-feeding the turkey is it becomes diseased and it dies because they force-fed it. Similarly, the startups were force-fed capital, right? Too much of capital which was not required.
Right.
For them to keep spending, and they literally are dying or have died, thousands of them across India. Globally, there could be 100,000 startups which shut down in the last 1.5 years. In India, the number is about 9,000. We don't hear about them, but they are there. They literally died out of indigestion. Right? I mean, it's quite counterintuitive, but it happened.
Okay.
Now, the good part is we are seeing a witnessing trend of new technologies like generative AI come into the space.
Right.
And for the first time in the last 35, 40 years, we're not behind anybody. We're not playing catch up again. Because of all these factors that I explained, founders are ready to innovate because they have to innovate to be differentiated from all the e-commerce led models. So a lot of innovation is coming in. Good. And this is based on my conversations with hundreds of founders, which I meet across forums, especially at our educational institutions, research-led ones like IITs. I'm a mentor at large at a couple of them. Some new age ones like IIT Chandigarh, Ropar, IIT Bombay, also IIT Delhi, and then we have triple ITs. So our decade-old research-led education system is coming into the focus. Now, most of these institutions, and it will also be interesting for your young listeners, right?
Right.
They have
So over the last 10 years, what has
centers.
happened is,
All the
as I
IITs,
said, this whole
IITs,
focus on
IIMs,
e-commerce naturally,
and all
India
other
being a large market,
NITs
or
we
as
have
before.
national institutions.
Now what has
Which were
happened
built over
is now,
decades.
you see,
And they all have incubators.
global venture
supported
capitalists
by
are not
why
seeing
I made
exit
the
options very easily.
government,
Many other
mention
factors,
in 2004.
cultural
We've had a
factors,
stable
founder-led
political
fiascos like
climate in
Byju's
the last
again.
10 years.
I will make a
Possibly
few
the
mentions
next
of
5-7 years.
And India is,
most likely.
again, we are
which
not a
shows
homogeneous country
continuity
which
of-
even follows one law across the nation in
Correct.
terms of entrepreneur tax system. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
China, right? I mean, if they have 1.5 billion people, a few 100 million less than us now, but 700-800 million is the purchasing capacity of online shoppers, right? Similar to the US, right? US, of course, per capita incomes are higher. That's why you have large transactions. So India is different, and people have now understood it finally, and they are forced to innovate. Now, what we are seeing with generative AI and the whole buzz around it is the first time this technological leap is happening in the last 25 years, since the advent of the internet and then mobile smartphones, which were also led by the internet itself. This is something which is a game changer. And India is right there in terms of four factors, which I say: research-led R&D, because we have these institutions where a lot of founders are being brought up, right? I mean, they graduate, and while they are doing their academic courses, they get into entrepreneurship at the entrepreneurship cells or the incubators. And then you have a very mature VC ecosystem which is developing internally in the country. Lots of large traditional legacy business families, third generation, second generation coming in, wanting to get into new age businesses, because see, startup is something which is disruptive and easier to scale when you leverage technology and the internet compared to brick and mortar businesses. Right? Nothing good and bad, but it's just different, right? And then you have a lot of corporates, as I said, also being actively involved because of their corporate inertia, as you would know better than me, is not only a term, it's how they function. Right? So for them to take decisions, innovate rapidly is not so easy. That's why you see a group like the House of Tatas buying into new age startups. They bought Big Basket, 1MG, and so on and so forth. A Reliance, which is into a proper legacy business, oil, right, and textiles and all that. They have invested heavily in new age businesses with Geo. They're all over the place on e-commerce and so on. So that's a good part where new age founders, young founders, have the support coming in. Despite the downturn, we are still in something called a funding winter, which essentially means everybody's gone into hibernation. Right? So yeah, interesting times. I believe the next decade or so for India growth story from startups is going to be very exciting. Everybody looking up to us. We are no longer the back office, development center like we have all our IT companies, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and essentially they were all back office providers for the West. Now we are not. We are right there. You see a lot of global CEOs. We had Satya Nadella coming here last week. He keeps coming here. Also, the reason is a lot of global CEOs are of Indian origin.
Yes.
Right? They're of Indian origin. And it's not an afterthought to think of India. India is right. We have Sam Altman, the man of the moment currently of OpenAI, ChatGPT. He's made visits to India. The last year he was here. The who's who of India across sectors, political, industrialists, new age, everybody wanted to listen to him.
He makes a mention of India every now and then in his speeches. Elon Musk, by the way, has got approvals to bring in all his companies here, starting with Tesla, SpaceX, and Starlink, and so. For whatever reasons, he could not enter earlier, regulatory and rightful reasons. They wanted to protect the local. So very exciting times, right? So I think the next 5 or so years, we'll see a lot of emerging, innovative companies which are not copy-paste models. Also, one last mention on this note is that we are a large country with large problems. So solutions can be at scale, right? Which affect the life mobility up. When I say mobility, it's the upward mobility, moving across social stratas, right? It's a very aspirational society that we have. We are the youngest, the highest number of youngest population in the world. I believe, I don't have the exact number, but I think 30-40% of our 1.5 billion is below the age of 25, approximately. So exciting, right? Exciting. Of course, there are challenges also, but overall exciting, right? All in all, political, corporate, the whole ecosystem, and that is why it's called an ecosystem, right? Not just for the terminology of an ecosystem is when various, the dictionary meaning is various organisms survive together, help each other. That's what constitutes an ecosystem. So I think exciting times. Of course, it will still take 1.5-2 years for the froth to evaporate, which might be painful. But just like nature and evolution, destruction is required for new beings to emerge.
Fantastic. Thanks for those brilliant insights, Amit. Coming specifically to the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, for entrepreneurs who are navigating the complexities of today's the scaling stories, right? The scaling of their ventures. What key pieces of advice would you have for them to ensure sustainable growth and success?
Yeah, actually, a very pertinent point, and I find it amusing when a lot of big shot entrepreneurs these days and founders who've been are talking about sustainability, the business sustainability, profits, unit economics. And as I started my conversation with you, these are basic fundamentals of business, right? So interestingly, at our practice called Factorial, which I'm partner director at, we essentially deal with growth stage companies. And before even taking in clients, we are very selective. Firstly, we are a boutique management consulting agency, very boutique in our operations, for the simple reason that we want to do high quality work with very few companies, and our benchmarks are set very high. Sustainable business, long-term vision of the founder are key filters for us even before we take in a client. It's quite opposite of clients wanting to work with us. In our case, it's we wanting to work with the clients or not. So my key advice is sustainability, right? Funding, I've already given a whole picture, what happened, what is happening now. Very crucial times, funding is not available as it was available easily. Access to funding has become difficult. Now, because of all these reasons, you have to scale. Of course, scale is important, but scale sustainably. How do you do that, right? That is your moot question. Unit economics is something which you have to be careful about from day one. Now, of course, day one for a growth stage company which has transcended the 0 to 1, 1 to 5 journey, and now they're on their 10 to 100 journey, right? So day one is way behind them. But still, look at unit economics. Now, unit economics, again, dictionary meaning is each unit that you are selling of a service or a product should be economically viable. You should not be losing money, which has happened. Of course, you could be losing money on the overall business, which is also okay. But the goal should be to at least be EBITDA positive going forward in the next month. Once you are that, your dependency on external capital becomes minimal, right? Capital, like in our portfolio companies, we have 8-9 companies, 4 of them growth stage, doing healthy revenues, 150, 200 crore per annum. Again, I mean, not a Flipkart, Amazon, but still fairly big in the startup ecosystem. One key point that we devise and implement is close the gaps wherever revenue loss is happening. If it is happening because of hyper growth, we put a plug on that hyper growth. You see, because it's a fallacy that you will control things once you scale. So if you're losing money when you're small, you will lose more money when you become big. There is no way if a thing costs 10 rupees, $10 or something if you're selling internationally, and by the end of it, you're selling it for 8, the revenue comes in 8 after your marketing, sales, HR, everything cost, right? So that 10 rupee thing has to be sold at 12, 13 rupees, right? I mean, in Hindi, if I were to say, and I heard a very big entrepreneur in India, Ashish Hemrajani of Book My Show, last competitor to me, but and he's a Sindhi cultural nuance there. So he said, 10 रुपए की चीज है 12 में बेचना है 2 रुपए घर लेके जाना. See, that is, you might call it Lala mentality or anything, but that's the traditional way of doing business. So do that, have a strong focus. Yes, growth is important, but it's not like a killer thing, right? Grow sustainably. We have a company in Hyderabad, Sid's Farm, one of our portfolio companies, grew up slowly. Now they're expanding to Bangalore, Pune, and all that. It's taken 7-8 years to reach that stage, right? So,
but that kind of availability of that time is not afforded by many entrepreneurs and many startups
so founder
today.
Vision on what they want out of the whole thing. And I tell a lot of founders that I mentor or who reach out to me for advice. See, Amazon, Google, Facebook, these are not the norm, these are exceptions. Right? Led by exceptional founders in the right circumstances, in the right markets. Right? In the 90s, early 2000s, when these companies came up, of course, Microsoft is much before that. I mean, they are peers with Apple, right? But all these companies, Google, Facebook, and so many others, right, came up in the 2000 period, right? .com era. Everything was favorable for them, which is favorable for us now, 24 years down the line, access to capital, government initiatives and all. So those are exceptions. It's okay not to aspire to become a large billion-dollar company. It's okay to run a perfectly normal, sustainable business where you can sustain your operations for yourself, for your employees, and the key stakeholders. One point that I've been wanting to make is the difference between a paper valuation and value creation.
Right.
So our advice is to entrepreneurs, and especially the ones that we formally consult, right? Focus on value creation, not only for yourself, which is the promoters, founders, for each member. This, starting with the employees or the co-workers, investors, your partners, your vendors, everybody should be benefiting in some way, if not in the immediate present, 5-7 years down the line. So when you work with that, and see, this instant gratification world, things happening in a short period of time, it doesn't happen. No matter how much we like to think technology has upgraded, evolved, blah, 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 it will not happen. It takes 10 years to raise a child minimum. Similarly, it takes 10 years to build a career in anything. Similarly, it takes 10 years minimum to reach a certain level in business. So, early stage entrepreneurs, founders, your listeners, at that age of having graduated or post-graduated, 21, 22, 23, have that focus that next 10 years I'm going to be doing this. I'm solving a problem. Have the problem solution mindset, right? Of course, I mean, there are pivots along the journey. Maybe things don't work out 3-4 years. Move on. Failure is not bad. So focus on fundamentals, right? And luckily, all the investors who pumped in money are also talking of these same fundamentals now, right?
True.
Right?
This is, I think these nuggets of wisdom will be very useful for the audience.
No, I always share experiences. I don't know, good or bad, but they're experiences if they can help people.
Thank you so much, Amit. As a subject matter expert yourself, who has implemented several, worked on several projects, I have a question. I have done a lot of OKR projects, right? And I'd love to hear your perspectives on growth models like OKRs and OGSM.
Right.
And in your experience, what are the blind spots that founders experience in implementing it? Because the failure of OKRs are very high globally. 80 to 85% of the OKR implementations fall flat after the first 12 to 18 months. So what, in your experience, can you share insights about this particular?
So, right. See, firstly, these are terminologies from the corporate world. You would be more adept at them, and I know you as an individual, you've run several workshops for God knows how many hundreds of corporates across your career, right? OKRs. And startups don't even know the definition of objectives and key results, right? So essentially, I feel they are not meant for those very early stage startups, obviously, because they don't have those systems and processes or teams, functional leaders in place. But assuming we are talking about growth stage startups, SMEs per se, right? You would still have founders, or let's call them promoters, right? So essentially companies who have a steady revenue, 50, 60, 70 member team going up to hundreds, right? Now, because if we talk about SMEs or startups, now they had a starting period, right? Where they wanted to disrupt things, break things fast and be champions of their industry and all. The founders themselves are not, and these are things which are never taught, or they are taught as theory in management courses, right? They've
Yes.
never seen it themselves. Most of these entrepreneurs are first generation,
Yes.
right? Even if they are second, third generation, they're coming from family-led businesses where these were not. So, of course, there does come a time when advisors, consultants like you and me come into the picture and wanting to put systems and processes in place. Right?
Yes.
They have to be put. Otherwise, it becomes a one-person-led organization or a coterie of people trying to run the show, and they run into problems. I have an example also for that. Paytm, by the way, is one of those examples
Sure.
which has come into the picture limelight now due to various reasons, including regulatory oversight. So you see, implementation is the biggest challenge there. Now, OKRs for a company, but what about individual OKRs, right?
Right.
When you hire even though I am an advisor consultant and so are you, unfortunately, what they do is they use theoretical initiatives of making a PowerPoint of 10, 15 pages, giving it to the management
So
for
true.
them to execute it. They'll give a lecture on this is why you need to do it, this will
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
By the time it starts getting executed or outcomes come in, they are not there in the picture to oversee that process. So I think the key difference lies between the vision of the founder, promoter, management, if there's a team of 5 CXOs and the CEO, and the individual mindset of individuals, right? That is where the misalignment happens. And as you rightly said, 80-85% is the failure rate on OKRs and OGSMs and various other things, right? OKRs come much after KPIs and KRAs, right? Which seems much easier to do for people, which are also not easy. So
It's not.
there lies in the challenge that it has to align with the collective vision of the company. So
Right.
when you have a vision, mission, value statement of the company, nobody aligns that statement with OKRs. Right?
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
So I think also there is a complexity in setting measurable outcomes
Correct.
or measurable benchmarks.
Specifically for certain functions.
Certain functions.
Yes.
Now, who is going to measure them? Are the insights or data coming after this actionable or not? So these are things they put it. So companies like in India, we have 10-year-old startups. They, for some reason, they like to be still called startups, which they are not. A Zomato or a Flipkart. You still refer to Flipkart as the number one startup in
Startup,
India.
yeah,
It's not a startup anymore. Firstly, it's owned by a global corporation called Walmart,
Right.
which is one of the largest corporations in the world. But it's fancy to be called a startup, right? So they do try to implement these things, right? Are they measuring it enough? They will put it just as because they can afford to hire expensive consultants, whether coming from usually if the money the company is well capitalized, they'll hire somebody from the big four. I have nothing against the big four people, strategy consultants and all. Now the word itself is strategy consultant. They will chalk out a whole strategy, 60-point, PowerPoint, 60 slide one, and give it. That's their job. Charge a bomb for it, which
Yeah.
the company can afford. Are they sitting for the next quarter, half yearly performance review?
Right.
No, they're not.
Right. The devil's in the execution.
You'll find it hard to believe this is delegated to HR when
Right.
HR has nothing to do with
Absolutely.
OKR.
Thank you for saying that.
Right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
HR is all about people management, right?
Yes. Yes.
Actually, I mean, HR is a different story altogether. HR also in India is conflated with hiring talent and firing talent. and not about the company culture and
Correct.
things like that. So this is the role delegate, and it has nothing to do with HR.
Yeah, it doesn't.
This has to be more about team management, team mastery, and all functional leaders getting together. You see, what happens and why they are not so effective is all functions, departments operate in silos.
Correct.
Sales does not talk to marketing, does not talk to finance, does not
Yes.
talk to so and so forth.
Correct.
Now, for all 5-6 major functions of the company are not talking to each other, operating on their different data sets, different teams and all, how do you put a combined OKR for the company? That's where they fail.
Yes.
Right? Ultimately, the leadership feels that, okay, in Hindi, jo chal raha hai, chalne do. Humko, we wanted to put it, we've put it. Then what they start doing is they start depending on data.
Correct.
They feel data is going to solve all their problems.
Right.
But is it actionable data? No. Data will come in when you put systems and processes in place.
Correct.
So I think, continuous alignment, communication, number
Yes.
one. As I said, they operate in silos.
Yes.
They're not communicating to each other.
Absolutely.
Right? They'll sit in board meetings which are useless, right? Weekly, fortnightly, or whatever, where it's more like problem solving.
Yeah.
Now, why did those problems occur? Nobody wants to go to the root cause, right?
True.
Because the problems would be so enhanced or enlarged by the time they sit down to communicate that it's all about solving the problems.
Correct.
Now, had they implemented all these system processes, OKRs, KRAs, KPIs, OGSMs in place, problems would not have occurred.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, yeah, things are changing, but kind of difficult. You need the right set of people to advise them internally and externally.
Thank you for that great insights, Amit. Drawing from your experience, how can entrepreneurs effectively cultivate the strategic alliances and partnerships to enhance their market presence and competitiveness?
Yeah, again, very important question, and it's been part of my philosophy from a long time, where I stress upon competitive collaboration, right? Compete healthily and collaborate with each other, especially when we talk about smaller ecosystems like India. And of course, I'm not talking of large corporates, right? A Tata or a Birla cannot cooperate or collaborate because they actively compete. But in a smaller ecosystem, when you come down, the smaller organisms like startups and SMEs, they actively need inter-cooperation between what's happening. Yes, they could be the same, doing the same business and be active competitors, but looking up to each other, sharing key resources, insights, works. Incidentally, I've been having conversations with a lot of venture capitalists who now want to actively collaborate with each other, with us. We are a mix of an advisory consulting firm plus a small fund. So we are a mix of everything, right? Now people want to cooperate and collaborate with us so that the deal flow that they get is very vetted, curated, coming from us, right? So and now what is more important for startups is the very same corporates that they disrupted, right? They still have to seek collaboration for them for validation of their innovation or their technology, for scaling up, using that ecosystem that the corporates had. See, a Tata has a much larger ecosystem across sectors. They're literally into every sector.
Right.
And they don't want to start new age businesses. We spoke about that. It's not so easy for them to break the monotony, the processes and everything. So they are more than happy to collaborate with startups. Right? Startups, somehow, some founders, see, why does somebody start a startup is to make money at some point. Very few options to make money. Either you go public, do an IPO, which is again an exceptional event. It's not the norm.
Right.
Very few companies are able to go public and IPO, or they have ambitions of getting acquired by a larger startup or a larger corporate. Right? For this reason, they feel that what they're doing, they should keep doing it, and then approach somebody when they're large enough. No, I think the right time for them to approach and actively collaborate with corporates is when they've reached enough scale, they've found product market fit, validation. That's the time. Tap into it. You have the example of Jio, right?
Yeah,
the
right.
entire platform, apart from their telecommunication business, which they laid the foundation for, after that, Jio technology, Jio platforms is built on active cooperation with startups, which they
Right.
eventually maybe acquire or
acqui-hire, right? There's a difference between complete M&A acquisition and an acqui-hire, right? Because again, Reliance was or is still a legacy business. They built it the way they built any business, right? Blood, sweat, toil, a lot of traditional principle-based, value-based business by Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani and then his sons. And now we have the third generation in the business. So they are not very adept at the new age way of working. And the perfect solution they found was to align with startups. I mean, Jio, I visited their office in Navi Mumbai. The average age of the team is 25, right? It's a large team, about 3,000 people there.
Okay.
They built it slowly.
Okay.
And you have at least 100 startups visiting their offices every month for various things, be it funding. Another thing that has come into existence, and I did speak about it earlier, was CVC, corporate venture capital.
Okay.
Corporates have venture capital arms, right? Earlier we had CSR arms where they thought of it as a CSR activity, or we'll give some money here and there and all. Now it's structured. A lot of large legacy businesses have family offices, right, which are managing their investments, led by probably third, fourth generation. And that is why it is essential. Cooperation also with a lot of academia, as I spoke about IITs, triple IITs, IIMs.
Right.
Engage with, I do that all the time, engaging with professors to see what kind of innovation and talent is coming out. Right? So I think they should be adept. I'll give you an example, and the founder himself spoke about it. We have two big food tech platforms in India called Swiggy and Zomato.
Right.
Literally the market leaders. I mean, there are always stories who is leading or not, but they compete neck to neck.
Right.
In a recent interview with Shraddha Sharma of Your Story, so the Zomato founder, right, and he has had very humble beginnings, doesn't come from a business family or anything, first generation. So he made a very nice and humble statement that on being asked about Swiggy as competition. So he said, no, it's very good. They keep us on our toes. We actively speak. In Hindi, he said, agar hum na hote, to wo na hote, as if we were not there, they would not exist. And if they were not there, we would not exist or scale. They would have existed, but not scale. So they keep each other on their toes.
Right.
They actively, they are competitors on a day-to-day basis, right? Eating into each other's market share. Also, you have to see, last point I'll make is, I know my answers are always very detailed. There's so much to share.
It's good.
Right?
I'm sure that is exactly what our audiences would be expecting.
See, also,
Please.
and let me tell you about new age entrepreneurs, early stage founders when they're coming in. They might be quite apprehensive of entering an industry. They do enter, right? And then they would see large corporates or large companies coming into the space. An example is generative AI, right? ChatGPT is the most common word for that. OpenAI, led by Sam Altman, is the market leader undisputedly, right? Coming out with new technologies, people start working on something and they come out with something. 3 days ago, they came with the text to video software, right? Where essentially on a text prompt in seconds, you can create a video, right? There were many companies who were building on that. What did they do? They opened up markets which did not exist. So you have to view competition, larger competition, in a way that they are there to open markets for you. See, the world is a very large place, 8 billion people. India itself, I said 1 billion is a fallacy, but that was only for e-commerce and the TAM, that not everybody with a smartphone internet is shopping online.
Correct.
But that does not mean they don't have other needs. Right? We have large problems, thus large solutions are possible. You have to view competition, larger competition, as opening up markets. Now, if somebody opens a market, right, then you have access to that same market.
Correct.
Now, one company, yes, there are monopolies in every business, but still that monopoly cannot possibly humanly, commercially control everything.
Absolutely.
Right? And now, what has happened with technologies like AI and everything else, and the smartphone, and there's been a democratization, right? The levers to enter into a sector, or what we call moats, have been going down and down, which means market access is more open. A young entrepreneur from India, if he wants to go to the Silicon Valley, nothing stops him, because the internet is a great leveler. Open up a website, start selling your products. The world is your marketplace, right? Now, you cannot be overwhelmed by the fact that Amazon is the leader, Alibaba is the leader,
Who will buy my products? Oh, there's always somebody who will buy it, right? So collaboration and being apprehensive of competition should not happen, right? I mean, collaborate, speak to people. It's happening across everywhere, right?
Okay.
Nothing to be scared of or to be defensive of. And people, one thing, on a personal level, people are more than helpful, ready to help, right?
Right.
Everybody has their own things to run, which they will run, right? I'll give you an example, the most famous, common example of a pizza. A pizza is a pizza is a pizza, right? It's a round pizza, which we humans sell in square boxes and eat in triangles, right? But doesn't mean new pizza parlors, pizza places are not opening. They do open in every neighborhood, every day practically. Innovate with the toppings, right? You can have different toppings, different stuffings. In India, we have, I don't know, paneer pizza, and God knows innovation has happened. I mean, there is no dearth of innovative things, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Just change the spokes, maybe.
Fantastic insights, Amit. Thank you. You are actively involved in the VC ecosystem, right?
Right.
I just want you to throw some light on the current investment landscape in India, especially. What advice do you have for aspiring VCs? What can change in the VC ecosystem? What have we done well in the VC arena, and what can improve? And how can we make more impactful and strategic investment decisions? What do you have to say
Yes.
to the
You
VCs?
see, firstly, you have to understand, and so does everybody, not only you. VCs are also humans, right? There is, again, I use this word fallacy again and again. It's a misconception, let's say, that VCs, when investing into a company, know everything about business and all. No, they do not. VCs are in the game of investing. VCs are in the business of managing money, making money for their partners, their limited partners, and for just facilitating a lot of things, including innovation in the ecosystem. Now, I've already given, I won't repeat the background of what's happened in India specifically last 10, 12 years. A lot of mistakes have been made by no matter how pedigreed the VCs or how marquee they were. They've still made mistakes. As humans, you do various reasons.
Right.
Good and bad part about it. Good part is now they are forced to also think hard, not go with the human behavior of FOMO investing. It's a human behavior, right? I mean, see, there are two ways. Either we keep blaming them or we look at the positives, right? They will exist. Venture capital is very necessary. There's no point always playing the devil's advocate and blaming that they are responsible. Yes, they are responsible. Everybody made a mistake. Good part now is things are changing. In India, we have a lot of internal capital which is being deployed in the startup ecosystem from family offices, government initiatives, IITs, and so on and so forth. So things are only going to be better going forward. My advice to them is there's still a lot of now, for example, AI is a frenzy word, just like crypto and blockchain and NFTs, and you know what happened. They follow global trends, but now they have understood that India is a diverse, heterogeneous market with its own needs, and there will be, we have our own problems, which might not even be remotely as similar to the US or the China model, right? Or not large, but I mean, we are the largest anyways in population and size also, right? Other developed markets like Europe and all, right? Their problems are different because they've gone through their growth curves, which we are now going through. It will still take us 2 decades to reach levels of infrastructure. So startups, not necessarily they just have to plug and play internet and call themselves startup. A startup is something which starts up with an idea, with a vision to solve problems. Lots of problems exist in India across sectors, in infrastructure, pollution, water, clean tech, so on and so forth. We have a portfolio company called Indra Water working on water innovation, right? I think you're aware of them. I did introduce you.
Yes,
so why I'm making that point is they recently raised, and it was announced in media also, a $4 million funding round invested in by a Swiss venture capital firm, a very large
a venture capital firm, their first investment in India. So imagine a Swiss, which is a European legacy fund, investing in a company based out of Thane in Maharashtra near Mumbai, uh, because they are addressing a large water pollution problem and a water reuse problem. 95% of the water which is being treated through their technology, a patented technology, is fit for reuse. So imagine sewage water is fit for reuse again for the same purpose. They might achieve potable quality. So imagine sewage, industrial wastewater can be drinkable water. The scope is enormous, right? And we had a global VC putting in money along with Indian VCs also. Similarly, innovation happening. Now, this is not a typical technology led. There is technology,
Yes.
which is called deep tech, right? So I'm hearing this word again and again, and I keep speaking about deep tech. And we have the VC ecosystem also in India now, willing to take these long bets because gestation cycles are much longer when you innovate from scratch and don't copy paste from the West.
Right.
And the good part is that they are willing to wait enough now, right? So my advice to them is keep backing young entrepreneurs, keep taking bets. Please do not get into this whole mafia kind of an ecosystem, which is also a human nature. You tend to favor people that you know.
Correct.
Right. I mean, even though I use the word
Familiarity
mafia,
bias is there.
yeah, the
Yes.
bias is there.
Yes.
Confirmation bias, familiarity bias, authority bias. You could have a named founder who's had 2-3 companies which he's founded, doing well or not, but he's known by those companies, right?
Correct.
There is a cult of the founder also, which is beginning to take shape in India, like Silicon Valley. We do have Elon Musk, Sam Altman, or Bill Gates kind of similar personalities emerging in India, right?
Right.
And it is natural for then investors to back these people for their next companies. So that's how we call it whatever you call it, a casting couch or a mafia network or whatever. So my advice is look outside that network also. There's a lot of innovation happening. Give them the right backing, support, actively engage with them. And we'll not be in the position that we are in today 10 years down the line, right? So things are only looking up. I remain positive despite all the negatives which have happened, especially last 3 years. Yeah.
Thanks, Amit. I'd like to touch upon a very important point. You recently spoke on NDTV Profit about the Paytm related decision that happened from RBI, and generally what is happening in the fintech. You also have been very vocal about edtech startups like Byju's. Now, having spoken about these topics on several occasions, as someone who's deeply involved in this VC ecosystem, what is your advice for VCs and also invariably the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, where they should, when and where and how should they, rapidly grow or scale? And what is that, model, the framework for them to do this in a sustainable way? And also, what are those blind spots that they need to, look into and be wary of?
See, firstly, there's no one size fits all approach. There's no cookie cutter model that you can copy paste across sectors, industries. Coming specifically to those examples, which have to be told, Paytm, the recent one, Byju's in news from the last forever, actually, for some reason. But they follow different trajectories, different founders, personally and professionally, but a lot of similarities. Number one thing which I'll bottle down to is chasing hyper growth, right? Unrestrained hyper growth due to various factors I explained earlier. Access to capital, founders betting in on everything on one particular company, and also what happens when so much of money goes into one particular venture, right? I mean, stakeholders keep betting on it more and more, right? In the hope that things will improve it. But again, I come to that principle: if you don't make money, or if you haven't sorted things when you're small, those problems will only become large, right?
Right.
It's like a dam, right? If a dam has some hole and water is going out of it, eventually that hole will keep, because of the pressure,
bigger,
external
yes.
pressure of water, the hole will keep enlarging, and until one day the dam bursts. And it has already burst in Byju's, for example, even though he's trying all survival tactics. Some personal issues there in terms of the entrepreneur's mindset itself, right? A lot of focus on PR and advertising and creating hype. The Paytm example,
contrasting personalities. I've in fact met the Paytm founder a couple of times, Vijay Shekhar Sharma, very humble man, first generation entrepreneur, worked his way up in an ecosystem he didn't understand due to language barriers, cultural barriers, and so he belongs to a very small town called Aligarh in UP, right? But he did his engineering, and so he worked his way up. Now, in working those way up, again in that hype period, 2014, 15, innovation was there. He is the one who brought the QR code and wallet technology into the fintech space, right? I mean, we didn't have QR codes existing before that. Even a Google Pay or all other platforms came after that, right? The regulator in India, which is the Reserve Bank of India, looked up to them to innovate so that the dependency on large banks in India, private and public, is lessened. And the new age customers were accustomed to using technology, and those corporate majors were not adept at using. So mistakes were made in terms of scaling too fast, and the founder and those things that we spoke about, systems, processes, not being put in place. So a company, when it's at 0 to 1, of course, the founder has to do everything. Small team, 15, 20 people, grows up from the 1 to 5 journey, 50 people, 100 people, right? Still the founder is all in all in taking decisions and everything, right? But then the leap happens, 10 to 100 journey, right? So 5 to 10 is just 5 spaces, but 10 to 100 is a big leap. Big leap. And that is when they need help. They need to upgrade their systems, processes, their culture itself. What worked during initial years is not. Now, what happened with Paytm, you can't blame them. Those phases, there's always a time period of 2, 3, 4 years between these phases, 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 10. It didn't happen. Right? They grew too fast due to certain macro environment factors like demonetization, for example. Now, they didn't plan it. It was planned by the political establishment and regulators. Right. Demonetization happened. Everybody going digital in currency, at least for that time period. Right. And Paytm was right at the forefront. They didn't know it's going to. Nobody knew, right? You, me, nobody. Right. As I believe, only 5 people knew of that decision by the Honorable Prime Minister. Right. But they had to somehow jump in, right? It's like you put somebody on a cliff and tell him a dragon is chasing you. You have to jump the cliff, right? And you learn along the way how to use the parachute and things like that. So that happened. But there were enough resources available at hand for them to put systems and processes in place. They didn't. They chose hypergrowth. Regulatory compliances were not in check. Now, that is an industry involving large public money, right? Money is always highly regulated globally, right? And especially in a country like India, because, I mean, if they have 300, 400 million accounts, 30, 40 crore accounts, large majority comes from lower stratas of society, right? You have, I took a cab this morning. My cabbie was using a Paytm wallet when I transferred him money. Okay. And I did tell him that be careful, right? And so imagine, extrapolate, my own housemaids. I have 2 housemaids and an attendant. They use Paytm. Last 3 years I've been sent. So look at the scale. Paytm has always it's not almost, it is a verb, right? Just like you say Google it, you say Paytm. You just might end up using another payment service like a Google or a Phone Pay or whatever, but you still, in modern lingo, day-to-day lingo, say Paytm kar do, right? I did the same with my cab driver this morning, and I used another platform to make the money, right? Right? But so that hyper growth, they did not put system process. You can't blame the founder, but of course, buck stops with them. They had enough opportunities. And my advice now, the question that you asked was, please do not, do not have lapses in those phases, right? External factors will always be there, put upon you, which necessitate your growth, or you might be, obliterated. And, that's what happens with startups, right? Now with generative AI coming in, for example, ChatGPT, a lot of startups which started 5, 6 years ago in various functions have the risk of extinction, right? A lot of functions, coders, for example, there are so many service-based coding companies, SaaS-based companies. Now, nobody wants to pay a SaaS company forever and ever and ever, when the same task can be done by a bot in less than minutes, right? So they are, staring at a future where they might be extinct. That is why they start taking shortcuts,
right? No, you cannot take shortcuts. Adopt new technology, talk to people, and regulation is something you cannot skirt, right? So, again, now, failure in India culturally is been looked down upon, but now things have changed, mindsets have changed. If at all you need to slow down your growth, please do it only for your own survival. Now, Byju's is fighting for survival, another example, and I do put out a lot of content around it, well researched content, not because I have anything personal against the founder of the company, but as a lesson for upcoming entrepreneurs. A lot of people looked up to the company,
Yes,
the largest
yes.
startup in India, most valued edu-tech company globally, not only in India,
Yeah.
$25 billion. Now, you would find it shocking, many listeners would, at their last valuation round at which they are trying to raise money is 25 million. From billion to million. I don't even know a percentage, how much it is, right? Thousands of percentage drop down.
Right.
Why is he doing it? He's fighting for survival.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He shouldn't have done it. And the most important part, in fact, I saw a video last night itself before coming here, customer centricity. Indian startups, for some reason, for whatever reason, have not been customer centric. The customer experience is lacking in large startups, e-commerce divisions. I find it very hard to name even one company which is adept at enhancing the customer's experience.
Right.
You have an Amazon, but it's not an Indian company. I've had multiple experiences with Amazon, no questions asked, refunds. I can speak to a human in less than 2 minutes.
Right.
Across Indian companies, legacy companies, new age tech companies, that customer, because again they believe we are so many in number, few customers here and there lost will not make a difference. It does. Right?
Absolutely.
It does. You have to. So my advice is focus on creating value, creating your brand, and not the brand logo or the image of the founder. Another fallacy that we have in India, the celebrity factor, and we somehow across different sectors we like to idolize people, right? We idolize our politicians, we idolize our sports people, cricketers, film stars. They become demigod figures, right? Cultural nuances, nothing good
Correct.
and bad.
Yeah.
Same as creeped into startup ecosystem. You have shows like Shark Tank and some others, which are making celebrities of the sharks, which are judges,
Yes.
and some founders who come there.
Right.
I mean, it's okay once in a while, but that again, these are exceptions that cannot be the norm.
Yeah.
Build silently, build slowly.
And these are the kind of shows and these are the kind of stories that are built, which actually does influence the younger entrepreneurs.
Yes, it sets expectations,
Correct.
right? And when those expectations are not met, everybody feels bad about it. And so set the right expectations, build rightly, silently. The whole, and a lot of people to blame or the ecosystem, startup media focuses on valuations, unicorns, that
Very true.
mythical creature. Oh, we minted 100 unicorns in 2022. Well, surprisingly, 23, we just minted one. Right? And now we don't hear about unicorns. It's a mythical creature, paper valuation, which has no correlation to reality. So don't fall for gimmicks and all. Let your work speak about yourself. My companies, our practice companies, 7, 8 of them, very healthy, very good companies. We have to actually literally beg the founders sometimes to do a PR media interview. They don't like to do it. They don't have time, first of all.
Right.
They want their work to speak out. If there is a funding news, it is an organic news that so-and-so company got. I gave you the example of Indra Water. It got funded. So the news came out. Swiss VC came in. It's not that they planted that story for PR or to gain customers.
Right.
Also treat your customers as your investors, not the other way around. Right? What has happened is they've treated their investors as their customers because the money came in from there.
So true.
So we have the example.
Which goes to say that, Amit, that a VC need not necessarily be the subject matter expert for the company that he's investing in.
No, they never are.
They aren't, but they are looked upon to, do play that role. I think that's where
I can give you just 2-3 examples. We have a company called Dunzo in India. 12 years down the line, they're struggling for survival. They have no business model. The largest VC investors in India, including Reliance, including Google, including Microsoft, invested in them. Now, people would think these people cannot make mistakes. Well, they did.
They did.
Right. We have a very famous company called FTX in the US. Sam Bankman-Fried was the CEO founder, invested in by the who's who of corporate America, global corporates. Sequoia Capital, one of the largest investors in the world. The company went bust. Right. So the cult of the founder, hype and all, get away from that. Right.
Right.
You have brilliant founders in India called Sridhar Vembu of Zoho.
Right.
Or the Kamath brothers of Zerodha.
Zerodha.
They've never raised any penny from outside, doing exceedingly well.
Right.
But people only see the success now. Right? Taken them decades. Zerodha, they've been on it into whatever they did earlier, just their individual broking business earlier, both the brothers, who don't come with any pedigreed education or family backing, but they worked their way up. Now we see the success. So there are ways, and it's a choice. Funding or not funding, dependent on capital or not, is a choice. Right? No, nothing good and bad. Different paths. Right? So be conscious of what you want to build, how you want to build. Zoho has the same amount of revenue as certain companies are valued at in billions. Right? That's his vision. He's been doing it for 25, 30 years.
Yes.
He wants to continue to do it till the day he's alive. Right? So that's an individual vision. You have so many entrepreneurs coming out of Zoho who've created large companies. Right? Infosys is a corporate example, but they started like a startup.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Reliance, I've heard Mr. Mukesh Ambani speak that we started as a startup. My father started in a small room with a chair and table. Right? And Jio is still run like a startup, probably the largest startup in India. So fundamentals. Don't lose sight of fundamentals is my advice to everybody listening across various age groups. I mean, you have 40-year-old people also having storied corporate careers, becoming startup entrepreneurs. Right? So for them, the same advice applies. They have to unlearn a lot of things and start relearning. And there's no harm.
Yeah,
right?
sure. So, what are your parting words, if you can share some parting words?
Parting words, okay.
What would you like to share with our audience? Just those 2-3 critical takeaways. It could be either for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs.
I've already given so much of
yes,
and spoken at length on so many things. But again, don't go for glamour.
Yeah.
As humans, everybody craves glamour and attention, especially in this age of social media. You like to be featured and you like to have those thousands of likes on a story that you put out or others spoke about you. It's natural, right? But do all those things once you've had some kind of real achievements. You've created enough value where people are organically talking about you. Not fake planted stories like, unfortunately, again, like a Byju's, where you hire brand ambassadors to do, people like Shah Rukh Khan or Lionel Messi, to do talking for your startup. No, that's not the way. Again, they had access to so much money, they were able to do it. People might say now they've failed, so you're taking that example. Well, they were bound to fail with a lot of things that went wrong. So build solidly, speak to people, take advice, mentorship from people who've been there, done that, successful or not, but people who have experience.
Right.
Experience brings in a lot of nuances. Right.
Yes.
People like yourself, probably me, having been there, done that. If somebody were to ask me what are your specific skill sets, very hard for me to nail down. It's a generalist thing because I've built businesses, failed in businesses, helped so many people. And so always be willing to talk people. People might not. There's one global icon, the late Steve Jobs. This is my parting word. Of course, each word that he said has become a quotation on social media now. And his most famous speech that he gave at a college graduation ceremony a few months before he passed. Most people wouldn't know when he was 13, 14, he just picked up the phone. He was building some computer system and he needed parts for it. And he picked up the local directory, and a big company, which is still big, called Hewlett Packard, was in existence. This should be late 70s, I think. And he narrated this instance himself, and I'll tell you why. He picked up the local directory, and probably Mr. Hewlett himself was accessible with a number listed on the directory. He reached out to him, only 13, 14, and he was building some tech project. And he asked for certain counterparts, some counter technology thing from HP, Hewlett Packard, and spoke to Mr. Hewlett and asked him for those parts that I want these parts. And to his surprise, which he narrated many decades later, he got those parts, also an internship at that company, or a summer job as they call it in the US. Right? So the moral of that story was always be willing to ask for help.
Right.
Help is always available.
Right.
It's just that we are in awe of all these big people. And let me tell you another insight. The more people reach up the corporate ladders or success achievements, so the people at the right top, right, they are more accessible than anybody else at all, right? I mean, and I have seen it myself on LinkedIn personally. Firstly, a lot of people reaching out to me who consider me to be very senior to them or as a potential mentor. Me, myself, reaching out to the very top, to CXOs, founders, industry veterans and all. 99% of the time, I do get a response, right? So I've stopped being apprehensive now, or stopped being scared or in awe. A human is a human. They are more than everybody's had a story of how they reached to the top, and they don't forget it, right? So don't idolize these people and be in awe of them. Just reach out. The worst, what will happen? No.
Say no. Yeah.
They will say no.
Yeah.
But if you don't reach out for help, right? And I think because it's been a very engaging conversation on so many serious topics. See, the basic goal has to be that you're enjoying what you're doing.
Correct.
Right? Have fun in whatever way possible you can with your colleagues, with your peers. Spend time with your. At the end of the day, like again, Steve Jobs, right? I mean, unfortunately, he died a very painful death with cancer and all that, and he's a living legend even till now. Right. The legacy that he built, Apple, is undoubtedly, by any metric, the largest company in the world. Right. Valued at $3 trillion. Consistently, they've been on the top, right? Yes. And it is largely due to what culture he created, the vision he created, right? The legacy he's left. But unfortunately, he's not there to, savor it all. But he still lived a full life.
Yes.
And so that is my advice to people. Funding, valuation, the hype, Shark Tank is not the end of everything, right? Have fun with your people, enjoy time, don't get stressed. Maybe sometime else we'll talk about other issues, stress, mental wellness and all. So those are very important issues. You don't want to get there, right? You as people listening in and our audience, just don't stress about things. Help is always available. And do things, the last things, do things for the long term and the long run, right? Short term, instant gratification, Instagram, Facebook is only good to that part. It doesn't apply to life.
Yeah.
Right?
Thanks so much for those great insights, Amit. Before we wrap up, I have a rapid fire round.
Oh, wow.
Quick questions.
Oh, wow.
Just to help everyone know you better. What's your favorite color?
Black.
Your favorite food?
I mean, a lot of junk food actually. Steaks, burgers, muffins, croissants,
All right. Who's your favorite actor?
I don't have any actor per se because I don't idolize it. But still, if I were to pick and choose one, Al Pacino from Hollywood.
All right.
And from the new generation would be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay. Where did you go on your last vacation?
Goa. And the next one also will be Goa.
Okay. What's your favorite go-to pastime when you have free time?
Writing for me and listening to music. Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite subject in school?
Mathematics.
Okay. Do you have a nickname? If yes, what? Sunny. What was your major in college?
So I did marketing.
Marketing.
In my management. Yeah.
Is there a dare that you accepted from a friend which you feel embarrassed
way back in the
about?
day. I mean, I'm not disclosing my age, but way back in the day, on a vacation on a beach, was told to do some obnoxious stuff, which included going and kissing a stranger on another table in a restaurant. Yeah. In the business world also, has happened at a conference.
Okay.
Asked me to just go and say something to a very famous entrepreneur, which I did do.
Okay. What item do you think is worth spending more money on? Is there any collectible that you like to
Not
invest?
really. I mean, maybe I'm the wrong person. I mean, anything which gives you long-lasting joy, happiness, value. Now, that anything can be different for different folks, right? Definitely not gadgets and the stuff which are everyday devices. You lose one, you exhaust one, you can buy another one. So anything which lasts for a long could be, yeah. I mean, I would say experiential, right? Anything which leaves memories, right? Which is going on vacations or traveling and things like that. It's not a thing, but it's an experience.
Okay. Do you like pets?
Yes, I do like
Cats
pets.
or dogs?
Dogs, definitely. Cats are scary. Very, very scary. Those eyes are scary. Yeah.
Summer or winter?
Winter, definitely.
Morning or evening?
Late night. Yeah.
Salt or sweet?
Sweet, definitely.
What motivates you the most?
Speaking to people, having different personalities to speak to so that we can share experiences. Yeah, that motivates me the most actually to speak to people. And I'm at this, by the way, at this middle generation where I'm very happy speaking to people 20 years elder to me and 20 years junior to me. I'm in the middle. Every generation has that little thing, right? So,
Right.
yeah, that
Okay.
motivates me to. Maybe I'm not adept at Gen Z lingo, so it motivates me to speak to Gen Z, adapt to their lingo.
Okay. What's the best advice you have ever received and from whom?
I mean, very hard now to pinpoint. Strangely, from some juniors over the years, one particular instance, two girls that were very junior to me working in HR at a company that I was running at that time. And the advice that they gave me is, sir, don't work so hard.
Okay.
Because, of course, since I ran at 20 miles an hour, they were all inclined to also run at the same speed or something. So, sir, don't work. I do get very mechanical when I'm working, 18, 20 hours a day. I don't feel it, but others think that maybe I'm doing too much for the same outcome, right? But it's a personal thing. So yeah, don't work too hard. Or have a work-life balance is the advice that I've gotten from people. But for me, actually, that still exists. People don't understand that I don't differentiate between work and life, as most people, right?
Right.
But on the external. So yeah, it was well taken, the advice of not disturbing people in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Okay. What life lesson do you wish that you had learned sooner?
Well, tons and tons of them. I was fortunate enough to have learned many lessons from my parents, which everybody do in their lives. And then because I told you that I got into working very early in life. But still, I mean, to plan for life, if somebody had told me to plan for my parents themselves were nomads across many years. So they lived in multiple countries for whatever reasons. And so if somebody would have told me to plan better, right? I mean, I don't blame my parents. They were living their own lives, as I now understand, and did more than the best they could. But if I had a structured mentor or somebody to tell me to plan, many things in life much better, I've been more like a go with the flow kind of a person. Yeah.
Okay. One last question. What secret about the universe would you want to learn the most?
Are there more people apart from us? More beings? I mean, the universe is exponentially large, infinite. So I'd like to learn. I mean, who are the other people beyond our tiny little planet Earth?
All right. Fantastic. Amit, thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
a very invigorating and a very deeply insightful discussion.
Pleasure.
And I am sure that the audience would resonate, the entrepreneurs, the young aspiring entrepreneurs would resonate with a lot of advice that you have shared with them. Is there a way that they can reach out to you if they have more questions?
No, definitely they can contact you for my email and phone number, possibly, if at all they require it. I am available on LinkedIn as Amit Gupta, the incessant poster on LinkedIn. I mean, I do share a lot of stuff. So, I mean, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Amit Gupta Factorial, if you search on LinkedIn, you'll find me. And I have an open profile, which I accept requests from most people. So, yeah, LinkedIn, I think, is the best. I spend inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Great. Amit, thanks a lot.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Dr. Deepa.
We
Thank
hope
you.
to speak to you again soon.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Pleasure.